And excuse me, my name is Sophia Bachi, and I'm the digital strategist and content manager here at OCP. I'm Nigerian and I'm based in Abuja. So at OCP, we bring open data and open government together to make public contracting reforms agile, more impactful, and more sustainable. Our community, which we're a part of, is such that everyone is passionate about what they're doing. Everyone is passionate and just working in their own silos of expertise. But considering the size and complexity of public procurement, I think you agree with me that it would be better if we join our efforts together, just like a jigsaw puzzle, right? If we fit in our work together and achieve our reform goals. Which is why at OCP, we say that we are a silo-busting collaboration across government, civil society, businesses, and technologies working to open up and transform government contracting worldwide. So thank you for joining our first Nigeria call. So why are we having this call? This is an open discussion. My colleague Andy is going to speak more on this, but we're having this call. We're going to run an open conversation. Everyone here is equal, and we're going to have speakers on the call who are going to share with us some of the interesting things that they are working on or they've worked on. So you're welcome to raise your hand if you want to speak, unmute yourself, or drop questions in the comments or comments in the chat box. A bit of traffic management, because I'm sure sometimes a lot of people want to speak at the same time. We're all passionate, right? So please bear with us as we will take the questions or comments one after the other. So before we proceed, we have some simple ground rules for us to get the best of this conversation. So first of all, be present. Please ignore WhatsApp people. Keep your microphones muted. Very, very important, except you raise your hand up and we permit you to speak. Please keep your microphones muted. Make use of the chat box and Zoom reactions. So if someone says something that resonates with you, please feel free to react with the reaction buttons that we have. And of course, you can turn off your camera if your network is not very stable so that you can get the best of this call. So finally, when we give you the chance to speak, please know that you have to keep your comment within 1 minute. Please, no shalaing. Let's just try to be as succinct as possible. Thank you. So we're going to start off with a word cloud activity. We're going to ask you a question and you put in your answer in this link that I'm sharing right now in the chat box. So our question today is, what word would you use to describe public procurement in Nigeria? We're all stakeholders in this community. We know what our realities are. We have our different experiences. So what one word would you use to describe public procurement in Nigeria? Please click on the link that I've shared in the chat box and drop in your one word. You can put as many words as possible, but one at a time, so we can automatically generate them and show to you.
We can already see answers coming in. Someone has said black box, we said huge. Yeah, and Sophie, please look through the answers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Huge, very correct. It's a dot. EGP, opaque, cash cow. That's an interesting one. Ritimi says messy, corrupt. We would appreciate if you can put that in the link that we've sent to you so we can generate and share this image with you at the end of the call. Ongoing, yes, we're having progress, we're making progress, and hopefully much more to come in the near future. Shady, okay, please keep them coming. Corrupt, network of fraud, that's 3 words, but okay, thank you, Liberty. Okay, so I will pass on the mic to my colleague Andy, and she's going to take us through the rest of the call. So thank you again for coming, and let's keep the conversation going in the chat.
Well, thank you so much, Sophie, and thank you everyone for joining today's call. And I can see, keep your answers rolling in. From what we can already see, there seems to be a lot of darkness around procurement in Nigeria, because you used words like black hole, opaque, shady, black box, messy, and some of them refer to it being very large, a huge cash cow. And I see some people are also sharing how they feel it is going, and that it is an ongoing process. And somebody here has written EGP as well, which informs a big part of what has been going on in the procurement space in Nigeria. And I see someone else has added challenge in there. So we're going to share these results with you at the end of today's community call. But once again, I'd like to thank you all for joining today's call. We know that many of you are working harder than ever at bringing activities to a close at the end of the year. And we thought a great way to wrap up all that has been going on in the open contracting space in Nigeria this year was to bring everyone together to discuss how we can work with each other to actualize contracting reform in Nigeria. So we're really keen on hearing your experiences, the struggles that you have faced doing public procurement in Nigeria, and we're also here to support your going forward. And we hope that you will feel free to reach out to us after this call so that we can keep the conversation going and think of different ways we can collaborate. Throughout the year, we've spoken to a number of you and to other partners in Nigeria and even beyond Nigeria. And we can agree that we're seeing a growing momentum in open contracting work, especially with the publication of data. So I'll just give a quick overview. I'll share my screen to give a quick overview of Nigeria's open contracting space. I hope everyone can see my screen now. Sorry, navigating on Zoom can be a bit tricky. And there's a dark bar at the top of my screen for my control settings, so I apologize for that. But I'll just give a quick overview of Nigeria's open contracting space. So this year, through the SIFTA's accountability and fiscal transparency, accountability and sustainability project, we've seen the 36 states of Nigeria receive support to open up their procurement processes and to implement e-procurement systems and improve their procurement law. We've also seen BPP continue to publish validated OCDS data, and we now have almost all the Nigerian states implementing open procurement reforms. And of these states, there are 26 states that state-driven open contracting portals that are now publishing some form of contracting data, with 7 of these states publishing validated OCDS data. So we're hearing a lot of publication. So the question is, what's now, what's next? What does that mean for Nigeria? And it's why we're here today. It's why we're having this conversation, because we want to see how we can help build the field on the side of the use of the data, because it's one thing for that data to be out there, and then it's another thing for people to actually utilize the data to get results. So our first goal, of course, has been supporting partners in publishing good quality data. And now we want to catalyze the use of contracting data across the country. And finally, work together to build a strong community of practice. And that is what we hope to achieve with the start of this call. And we're going to have continued conversations throughout 2022 and onwards on how we can foster collaboration in Nigeria's open contracting space. So I want to thank you all again for making time to join us today. And I want to give a special thanks to our instigators from government, civil society, and media. We were deliberate about selecting partners from all of the different spaces we've seen activity in open contracting in Nigeria. And they have all agreed to lend their voices to our discourse today. And I'll now turn over to our speakers to hear from each of them on what investments they have made in Nigeria's open contracting space, insights they have, challenges that they have faced, and how they feel multi-stakeholder collaboration can help achieve impactful reforms. And we can then together build a more inclusive ecosystem. So I will start off with Brenda Angwom, who is a lead consultant at Nigeria's Government Forum and was a big part of the SIFTA's project. So Brenda, over to you.
Hello, Andy. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to share my experience as a reviewer of the state's public procurement laws as part of the state's fiscal transparency, accountability, and sustainability program, P4R, Program for Results. This project actually seeks to strengthen the fiscal transparency and accountability of participating states. And then it has several components. And during the introduction, we heard Andy talk about the open contracting systems and all that. And of course, we know that if there's going to be a total reform, apart from strengthening the financial instruments that states are using, it's another deep component is the laws that guide public procurement in the states. So this project has several components, one of which is technical assistance involving legal reform in the procurement sector, which is where I come in as a procurement legal expert. And as part of what we've been doing, we have been conducting in-depth review of states' public procurement laws in line with the World Bank SIFTA's annual performance assessment requirements. I'm going to be calling it APA requirements hereinafter. Now, let me just run down these requirements. There are 4 core requirements, and they are that the public procurement legal framework should be, that's the laws guiding procurement in the state, should be approved by December 31st, 2021 by State House of Assembly and must have a legal basis, which means any state that wishes to participate in this project must have a law regulating its public procurement sector. Number 2, the law should comply with the UN CITRAL model on public procurement. And we're talking specifically about the 2011 UN CITRAL model law. And it should provide for E-Procurement, establishment of an independent procurement agency, coverage of all ministries, departments and agencies receiving funds from the state budget. Number 3, there must be an independent procurement regulatory function that will be performed either through one or a combination of the council, the bureau, or the agency, or the commission, whatever name that the states use to create an agency that will regulate procurement in the state. And this agency must be independent. And then finally, the regulatory agency responsible for prescribing public procurement regulations and procedures in line with the legal framework has to do so towards improving good governance, management, transparency, accountability, and improved quality of procurement of goods, works, and services. So these are the 4 APA requirements, annual performance assessment requirements. And then they are sort of the guiding rules for the review of the state's public procurement laws. And of course, we know we have 36 states. And I must start by saying that we have reviewed the laws of all 36 states, but it just doesn't stop at the review because there are certain steps. We start by conducting a desk review of the law, and then thereafter we have a diagnostic consultative meeting with the government where we will discuss our findings, make our recommendations, and then draw up a state's action plan to guide the state if they're going to have an amendment in order to meet these requirements. And then, of course, we will have a further review after they must have drafted their bill before they send it to the state's houses of assembly, and thereafter publication online, which is also a requirement, and then implementation. So as we speak, like I said, we have reviewed all 36 states, all their laws. So there are certain states that have moved faster than others. Some have already amended their laws, published online, and are already implementing provisions. Others are still in the states, in the stages where they are still amending the laws, or perhaps the laws are still the laws are still in the bill format, which means still with the State House of Assembly or not assented yet by the government. So during the review, we faced, a couple of challenges, and of course, one of them is slowness. The slow process, which cuts across all the states. The slow process of drafting a bill to amend their subsisting principal law. And they always give you that, the governments, the representatives that we meet always tell us that it's really a daunting task, drafting a bill to amend the subsisting law, and then the process it goes through at the State House of Assembly can also be cumbersome. In that way, it causes delays. So that's one of it. And then, of course, the second a second challenge is the fact that some states go further to draft a bill, send to the State House of Assembly, push them to pass, and then transmit to the governor for assent without reverting back to us to further review. And the result of that has been either they don't meet all the requirements, or they miss out on the recommendations that we made. And then going through the process of sending the drafted bill to the State House of Assembly and all that, only to return and find out that there are some recommendations that have been missed. That actually was one of the challenges that we encountered, and that delayed the states, passing, all the requirements. And there's also a third one, which is the constant alteration of the verification protocol. The verification protocol is more like our rule book, the guideline that we follow while reviewing these laws. So we've had like 6 different versions of them, and whenever they change, we change the review of the next state that comes after we receive an updated verification protocol. So these are some of the challenges. However, going forward, I think it's very promising, because we are seeing the eagerness of states to actually have their laws amended to actually meet all these requirements. As I'm talking to you now, we're still working with states that have even gone further to amend their laws and return to NGF to further review before they post their laws online, and then of course kick off with the implementation and e-procurement, which is very vital. So in a nutshell, this is what I've been doing as a procurement legal expert. And I would say it's really promising. First of all, it's a great thing that all states were able to join in and send in all their laws for review. And we're still working towards it. We hope that before December 31st, 2021, which is the deadline, that all states would have been, completed the process, and we'll have all the laws online and implementation running. So thank you very much. I hope I didn't use all my 5 minutes and more.
No, you used just about 5 minutes. Thank you so much, Brenda, for giving us some insights into what is going on at the state level of implementing open contracting and improving their procurement processes within the states. At this point, I'll hand over to Mansoor Maman, who's with BPP, and he's going to be giving us the perspective from the federal level. They've been working closely with us for a number of years now and working towards building out an EGP system and an open contracting portal. So Mansoor, can you give us an overview of your work and insights and challenges you have found while doing your work? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. Good afternoon, everyone. From the perspective of the BPP, Bureau of Public Procurement on the federal level, we have actually since 2018 thereabouts have aligned with the commitments that we have made with Open Government Partnership, created an open contracting portal that we call the NOCOPO. The NOCOPO was created as far back as 2018 to enable agencies to impute their procurement plans and records. It was a co-creation with civil society. As far back as 2016, a coalition of civil society organizations come together as part of the procurement monitoring group, of which we are expected to regularly work together and see the achievements of open contracting in the Nigerian space, all in general. But as far back as that, we have been trying to ensure that the system that we currently have, which is the Nigeria's Open Contracting Portal, is fully compliant with the Open Contracting Data Standards, of which we are in the final phase of that at the moment. And at the moment, we have out of 850 agencies that are expected to be on the portal, we roughly have just about 400 and something. So we are at the point where we have a lot to do relating to all ministries, departments, and agencies to not only submit their procurement plans and records on the system, but for them to be really active on the system. So we are in a situation where we have lots of records on the system, but how do we confirm that some of these information imputed in the system are accurate and in the exact format that would be reusable by civil society organizations? So part of the things that we've been discussing is, first of all, to ensure that we have lots of inputs from the MDs, of which we have been putting up different strategies to ensure compliance of the inputs. Now we have substantial amount of number of data on the system. So how do we ensure that civil society organizations and citizens are being able to read this data and make good use of them? So seeing the need for us to have this open contracting system since back as the COVID-19 period, where people were all locked up at home and were expecting to see that if they have something on the system, they could then follow and say, oh, how many sanitizers do you buy? How many ventilators do you buy? At what amount did you buy? And then we'll be able to compare this or make analysis in comparison with other countries to see how much Nigeria buy those items and all that. So we've seen the need. We brought out some pages and inputs that agencies that are responding to COVID within that period should put up on the system, which we have some of the information. Some civil society organizations have been able to criticize and go through the system and use that in engaging the MDAs. So, but part of the problems we are having at the moment is that change management from civil society, from the government, from the officers, from the procurement officers within the agencies, to ensure that they impute procurement plans and records based on our system, based on our reports that we have earlier this week, which is yesterday. In 2021 procurement, which is just about to end, we have roughly about less than 300 MDAs that have imputed procurement plans on the system. Now, have in mind that this has been mandated. We have about 3 or 4 circulars from the Secretary to the Government of Federation mandating agencies to impute their procurement plans and records on the NOCOPO portal as a requirement of the law of the Public Procurement Act. So while we have educated them, oh, we don't collect physical procurement plans and records anymore, but we collect these procurement plans and records on the system. So the change management of them making input. So we have a good number, I wouldn't say a good number, probably half out of the people that have accessed the system, almost about 300 plans, but we can't find records. Records are nowhere. We just have limited records to impute. And when we go around for trainings and sessions with these agencies, they are just a little bit reluctant on coming back to the system and making these inputs for us to publish for the purpose of monitoring this. But as part of our strategy that we're working on, 2022 earlier, is to have further engagements with the National Assembly, further engagements with the Ministry of Finance to see how we can better enforce the compliance and the inputs on the system. Again, why I appreciate this forum is for all of us to sit down and discuss with the civil society organizations on how they can help agencies, how they can help us to see what are other strategies can we brainstorm and put up and say, oh, we need these information on the portal so that ministry CSOs can be able to monitor. So part of the challenge we're having is the inputs on the system. And I'd like to mention that we've had different series and collaboration with CSOs, of which we're trying to upgrade the system. And finally, we would be doing that the early part of next year, which is January. And we would, after this upgrade, require the inputs of CSOs and normal citizens to come on board and see what constituency projects they have, if these projects have been implemented or not, and all that. So we need further engagements and we need further collaboration with everybody. In the long run, we are already working on e-procurement for the country at large, of which we have selected about 8 pilot MDAs to begin with. We have gone far with the implementation. We have awarded the contract, and we just finalized the system requirements document just yesterday, of which we should have the first phase of e-procurement being developed probably by next year, and by later part of next year, we should be able to begin the first phase of e-procurement. Now, when we get there, it's going to be a little bit easier because it's an end-to-end thing. Projects will not be paid for if they are not on the e-procurement system. So this would actually make it a little bit easier for the issue of coming on board to make inputs and on the system. So basically, that is it. I hope I didn't take too much of the time, but yes, I appreciate this forum, and I want to use the opportunity to say that having this forum, more often, I would say once in a quarter or once in, I don't know how we're going to do it, is really going to help us to see how far we in the government have gone, and also the people in the a collaboration also with the state part of open contracts, and also civil society organizations, those based on federal and those based in the states. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Mansur. Mansur gave us a lot of detail in there about the work that they're doing at the federal level. And he did make a call to people on this community call to work with them, to collaborate with them to help address some of the challenges, because we have very many MDAs in Nigeria, and there's only so much that one procurement agency at the federal level can do to reach all these agencies and build capacity and ensure that there's clean change management across the board. So now that we've heard from the government, we're now going to segue to civil society. So I hope you're seeing the flow here in the process, the people publishing the data, the people using the data, and finally, we'll talk to the people that are telling stories with the data as analyzed and monitored by civil society. So I want to introduce Saeed Tafida, who has been working with us from Follow Taxes, who has been working with us on a number of projects here in Nigeria at the state level. And he will give insight on the work that they have been doing here. So Saeed, please go ahead. Thank you.
Good day, everyone, and good afternoon. It's a pleasure being here, and it's really a pleasure being part of this forum. I'm really happy we're here, and I'm really happy we have this discussion. I want to really start by appreciating actually people like Brenda, people like Umar, who have been doing well in making things work. So anything I say now, I'm not undermining what you guys have been doing. You guys have been doing great. I just want to bring out the facts and how things are.
Said has put a disclaimer before he
Yeah. So let's start from the beautiful three things Brenda spoke about, which is about the laws in existence. This is a very good thing. Procurement authorities being established, a very good thing, and open contracting data being made available. In fact, she celebrated something which we're all celebrating. All of these states now has public procurement laws. But this way the issues are. Now, the laws are in existence, but how are they being complied to? The procurement authorities are there in existence, but to what extent are they even enforcing the powers that they have? Open contracting data being made public, how much of the citizens know that these things exist? If you look at the first data we brought out when there's a first analysis, people wrote OPEC, people wrote it doesn't, people wrote cash cow, people wrote that it shows that everything was in the dark. Even though if you Google most of these states, you see their procurement data made public. So that's where the gap is. Most of the civil society doesn't even know those data exist. They don't know how to engage it. They don't know who to even engage, even if they see the information is available. Then that has always been a gap, and that's some of the things we're trying to fill. This is some of the works we're working with OC to see how we're going to bridge this gap. But the truth is, it is so huge. That's why I'm happy there's so many people in this call, so that you all listen to us. It means there's a general call for all of us to take into it. Have you ever taken time and checked the open contracting website of your state to see how much of a public procurement data is there? You'll be surprised there's a hospital established. There's a tendency, there was a possibility that you find that there's a hospital established just behind your house and it is not being built. So what did you do? What did you find out? And what did you really do to engage such a data? Sometimes we have an engagement in Nasarawa. We found that some local governments, they complained that they needed the primary healthcare to be fixed. And when we went and we found that it's among the projects that was allocated. So what we're trying to say is, how much of those information do we even know they exist and how much do we engage? Now that era has passed where we sit down and say, nothing works. They don't do things are opaque. Did you even check online to see if they're available first? Now, if they're available, because if what Brenda is saying is true, and if it is not true, don't hold me accountable, hold Brenda accountable. Brenda said all the states have joined. Now, if what she's saying is true, and you did not hold your state accountable because you did not follow those data that are made public, at this point, I think it is our fault as civil society, not just the fault of the government again. So it's a two thing that we have to engage. Then also the procurement authorities. If you go to the procurement authorities, most of the laws I've seen, they require even the procurement authorities to even bring in some form of a PMOs and civil societies into them. I saw a law of a state, Sokoto to be specific, in which they're supposed to add the Society of Architecture, Society of Engineers. And when we contacted them, they're not aware. And the truth is, maybe someone who has that credentials is part of it. It's understandable. But to be candid, unless he's fully engaged and the citizens are fully involved. So from all Brenda's discussion, you see, she keeps saying that they should bring it back to them for review. They take back. But at so many times, the people who the law are going to be engaged on are engaged minimally. That's even if they're even engaged at all. So these are some of the things that we think can be done better. Now, it's not too late because the law is done, the law is to be followed. Now, for the law to be followed, there's a need to translate. For example, the Cabinet State, we translated the law to Hausa to get people who have engaged it better. We tried to do some infographics around the law, but that is just one state. There's so many states that need that, and there's so many other activities that need to be done, which require a lot of activities. OC is supporting us find a way to come up and simplify the activities in Plateau State, because Plateau State took up the OGP mantle. Now, not every state may take up the OGP mantle, but it's every of our responsibility to make sure the right thing is being done and is being followed. Mainly, if I'm going to come back again to the enforcement laws, procurement laws, some of them are passed, but most of them don't come up with the guidelines. And the guidelines mostly guide the laws on how they're going to be implemented. Now, even if the guidelines are being created, we had research, there's a research funded by USAID, which we did in Sokoto, and we found that even some of the MDAs, the head of the procurement, planning officer, procurement officer, don't even know their procurement guidelines, even though the procurement law has been passed. And Sokoto State that year received the highest amount of CITAS grant. So they do these things, they present them so beautifully, they collect the money, and they showed you all that we're ready. Now, if we did not engage them, that they're giving us a chance to put a foot inside the door, then we don't get the result that we're supposed to create that matters, that will take things. So now I'm talking to not just Brenda, not just Umar, not everybody that is part of this call. That look, we have a role. If all this thing is true and these doors are open, we have to put our feet inside to be able to engage and work in. On this forum, this is really, really welcome. Thank you also for providing this, but I want to make a plea. Already before now in the National Procurement Law, we have what we call Open Contracting Forum, which Umar have been coordinating, and I think also, for now it is, I'm trying to remember the name. We work together. It's just, I usually forget names. Please remind me. Those, no, not budget. Yeah, PPDC. It's PPDC that are coordinating now the Open Contracting Forum. But if we can link the forum to this, because as a forum, we had meeting when we had funds to gather somewhere, which is very expensive to do. We had meetings sometimes on the WhatsApp when issues have come up, especially during Corona. But with this, we can link every member of the forum. I think we should target every member of that forum. Umar, who has the list of all those who are registered and members of that forum. If we can make sure that we pursue them to be part of such calls, everybody bring out the issues. We all get to discuss the result and we bring out the realities and see. So I think we can match this and we can have a better system that will keep working. So it will be like something coordinated that will have a better result, that create a better engagement. I talk too much, so I don't know if I'm speaking above 5 minutes, but I'll wait here, then we'll see how we can take it off from there. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Said, for being a great conversation starter. And point of correction, his name is Mansour, not Umar. I just wanted to correct
Mansour,
that.
forgive me, Mansour. We've been talking a lot. I don't know. I have problem with names. Sorry, sir.
It's okay. So yes, there used to be an open contracting forum here in Nigeria that has quietened down. So we're believing one of the action points from this call would be to revive that forum, as we're seeing that there are a lot more people that want to be a part of the conversation and engage in that conversation. And now, moving to our next civil society organization, Data Fight, I will hand over the floor to Adenike, who is one of the leads at Data Fight that is pushing forward the work of open contracting and supporting state level and federal level projects here in Nigeria. So Adenike, please go ahead. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you, Andy, for the opportunity to speak. Can we hear me? I just need to be sure that we can hear me.
Crystal clear.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining the call. I will be speaking a lot from the demand side of this conversation, which is where we fall. That is, civil society, media. You know, those of us who have the responsibility to ask people like Mansour and people like Brenda for how far things are going and to work with them also to get things going. On the part of Data Fight, what we have been doing, I heard Said mention something about, you know, how a lot of civil society actors, even media and the general public really don't know how to engage with this data. They don't understand it. They don't know how to engage with this data. And that is the work that Data Fight has been doing. What we have been doing in the last 2 years is connecting stakeholders to the stream of open contracting and open procurement. And this connection comes in the form of liberating existing data. So there's a lot of conversation and a lot of thoughts around how we don't have enough data. Not a lot of MDAs are compliant. I was at a meeting with PPDC and the team. We had a conversation, and it was alarming, the volume of MDAs who are either not compliant, not updating their data on the Nokopo platform, or that data is incomplete or inconsistent. And it's true, that exists. And that's a layer, that's a problem that we do have to discuss. I know Mansour had mentioned something around, you know, just kind of getting MDAs to comply. But the existing data, what is being done with it? The data that does exist, what are we doing with it? How are we using it? how are we connecting what the numbers, the figures that we see, how are we connecting that to development? And I think that's the core of the work that Datafied has been doing, liberating data in forms that is usable by demand side actors. So what we will do normally is, we know that a lot of people, when you see a lot of numbers, a lot of people can't connect, they can't relate. So what we have done on one level is to liberate the data and put it in a usable format, in a format that is easily understandable, easily digestible, easily accessible across sometimes state level, sometimes MDA level data. So what we've been doing is, liberating that data and making it usable. Another layer of that work is actually telling stories with this data. So we not only liberate it and make it available, we have an open data platform where you can access public data for as long as it exists and we have access to it. You're going to be able to access it on Datafight's open data platform. You're going to be able to access it in a form that is usable. So if you're looking for data around perhaps any MDA that is connected to you or to your work, or state government, or if you're looking for that kind of data, to the extent that that data is available, then you likely will find that data on Datafight's open data platform. But more than just making the data available, is also telling stories with the data. It's also saying, look, this is what it means. This is what it means when funds for procurement are misappropriated, when processes are not followed. This is what it means. And I think that layer of storytelling, which is our work, which is like the journalism arm of our work, I think that telling the stories is perhaps the most profound way that we can engage the everyday man, the everyday citizen, to demand action and to demand to ask questions. Really, I think storytelling is the best way that we can get people to be engaged. And Datafied has been doing a lot of that work. If you visit our Datafied platform, you'll find a lot of stories just around what these numbers mean. You've heard this number, you've seen this number, perhaps you've not seen it, perhaps you've not asked questions about, in recent times, the 2019 audit report came out, and it's no surprise. Frankly speaking, if you visit Nokopo and you see the volume of data and the quality of data on that platform, and then you see the audit report and just the many flagrant disregard for laws and for processes that were discovered in that audit report, you won't be surprised. There's a direct connection with the inability or the unwillingness, whichever it is, to put out proper data with just misappropriations and manhandling of funds and resources. And so what we've been doing again is telling those stories. But again, a third layer of that, and I think that it's especially just auspicious that we have this conversation now. We really do believe in collaboration. I think when the question of what open contracting, open procurement meant, when that question was put up, I think one of the things I said was that it was a black hole. And the reason is not just because of the corruption and just everything that is connected to that, but it's also because the volume, the depth is so much that it's literally sometimes walking in the blind, especially for demand side actors. It's literally like patting your way through the dark. So what we've also been doing is providing training. How do you interact with this data? What can you do with this data? Is providing training for civil society actors, for media organizations, providing training on understanding data, understanding how to engage, how to do investigations with data. Some of the organizations that we've partnered with are we've partnered with Premium Times, we've partnered with ICIR, Cable, Development News. We've also partnered with PPDC, HEDA on the CSO side, partnering in organizations to ensure that these data that is made, it's one thing to make data available, but you can also make it available and nobody's doing anything with it. So it's engaging with partners, because we do believe that we're partners. It's engaging with partners to ensure that together we can do some level of constructive work. Last month, I think last month into this month, OCP supported Datafied, and we were in 3 states. 3 states were in Jigawa, were in Edo, and we were in Jigawa, Edo, and what's the third state? Sorry. Ebonyi, thank you, sir. We're in Jigawa, Edo, and Ebonyi. And what we're doing is working with stakeholders in those states to understand public procurement, to understand. I think we had collaborations with BPP in those states, and we had them come into the room to help these stakeholders understand how to navigate these platforms. And we provided training on how to interact with the data that you're looking at. How do you interact with it? What questions do you ask of the data? So these are some of the work that we have been doing that we will continue to do in coming days. We've also partnered with our state government. We partnered with Ekiti State Government for their open data portal. And this level of, sort of like a multi-pronged approach, liberating the data, making it available, helping actors to understand what they're seeing now that the data is available. This is what it means, and this is what you can do with it. And then telling stories with this data is the work that DataFight has done thus far. And it's the work that we're hoping with partnership. I mean, I see a number of people in the room. It'll be interesting to see what we can come together to do, just partnering together, collaborating, because really it is such a big, wide hole that we all need to be connected to do the work effectively. I think I kept it within 5 minutes, but if I still have more time, I can still continue talking.
No, let's get around to all the other speakers and then take some questions, and then you can give further insight. But thank you so much, Adenike. DataFi has also been kind enough to drop the links to their open data portal for anyone that's curious and wants to see some of the work that they have been doing. And it's good that Adenike spoke on storytelling, because we're going to move over to some of our great investigative storytellers in Nigeria. And I would like to introduce Mr. Ajibola from the International Center for Investigative Reporting, based in Nigeria. They have also been active in the open contracting space and telling the stories that we see on open contracting and public procurement in Nigeria. So Mr. Ajibola, I will hand over to you now. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, I don't see him on the call at the moment, so I can also hand over to Mr. Liberty, who is a journalist that has been working in open contracting and working closely with PPDC on open contracting work in Nigeria. So Liberty Oseni, please. Liberty, you're unmuted, but we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
So, good afternoon, everybody.
Hi, good afternoon. Well, please go ahead. Thank you.
Good. It's my pleasure being on this platform, and one of the best things that have happened at the end of the year. So at Mawa Foundation, what we do in the last 1 year, we have been able to partner with PPDC and Research for Development to look into open contracting. But why our work is more or less telling the story and investigation. And what we try to do often is discovering the truth behind the data. Yes, the data is out there. Yes, the data is there. Yes, it's in the yes, we have it in Nokopo. But another question is now, what is the truth behind this data? So you find out that, you know, when you look at what happens, if you go to Nokopo, for instance, you see that yes, they put data out there, contract had been awarded, amount had been awarded, but when you begin to dig deep, you discover that it is not even the amount that's been put in the public that is being the contract is being awarded. Right. Sometimes you see that some of the companies, what we've discovered, some of the companies they put out there, sometimes when you go behind and begin to do deep investigation, you realize that some of those companies are even fake companies. And some we discover that, for instance, we just finished report about NDBC. We discovered that a company who is that this with in poultry are being awarded contract of road construction. Then the issue is, our core concern is on the procurement process. How do we select contractors? Are people following the Procurement Act and Fiscal Responsibility Act? Or people just sit down to give contracts to their friends? And at the end of the day, they'll come to Nikopo, or they'll go to a website or any other place to say, yes, we have done this. But when you begin to interrogate it, you discover that they are just messy, lot of corruption have gone down the drain. So in the last 1 year, we've been able to carry out different investigation on this thing, and I'll find out that there's a huge corruption that is taking place in Nigeria open contracting system. And the funny enough, you see, in most cases, even when you go to communities where these projects are being implemented, many of them don't even have the idea. So there's no community ownership. They are not telling them that this is, they don't take part, they're not part and parcel of those who, in terms of contract selection, they are not. And there's one thing that we are all missing out. And what we are missing out, that in all this conversation, we are missing out on the role of non-state actor, the private, how would I call it? Not state actors, private companies, because it is the private companies that the MDAs collaborate with to really purify the people. And unfortunately, the Freedom of Information Act, which most of us leverage to do this kind of work, to unearth what's happening, Freedom of Information Act does not capture the role of the private sector. So when you investigate MDAs, you just discover at the end of the day, everything they do, the network, I'm sorry to use this word, the network of fraud that happen between the government agencies and the private sector. Right. So that's where we need to be focusing attention on. Now, we need also be, and let me also talk on the issue of challenges briefly. You see, it will amaze you to know that some MDAs in this country do not even know that procurement law exists. And some that know, there's a high level of impunity, right? And most of them, because Section 8 of the Freedom of Information Act demands or provides for money to be paid before information is given. Some of them will tell you to pay as much as 10,000, as much as 20,000 to give you the information you're looking at. And they will make it so difficult that before you even meet the requirement, you get frustrated, you know? So we need to begin to think in terms of capacity building in the area of MDAs. And we also need to begin to increase our investment in the area of conversation, in the area of advocacy, particularly in the area of media, because there is little conversation and little about data analysis in this country, you know. These are some of the issues. So as we begin to progress, we should also know that there's this kind of how will I put it? This kind of hatred. People look at some of us who do this. Okay, let me just say that in Mawa Foundation, for instance, we have realized that yes, you have written this story. Yes, you have done investigative story. Yes, we have cried out, but who cares? And that is why we have moved at Mawa Foundation. We have moved from writing the story to reporting them to the EFCC. The moment we do thorough investigation and we realize that a lot of fraud has taken place, we petition into EFCC. I wouldn't mention there are two MDA, two agencies now that EFCC are on their neck because we actually reported them to EFCC. So for us, we have moved beyond just publishing story or beyond data analysis to when we finish, we are going to drag it to EFCC. And I also want the other NGOs or probably the media to know that we can't win this battle if only when we write story in 1 week, 2 weeks, another thing takes it. When you lay your hands on iron cast evidence, let us not also begin to think in terms of how do we scale it up to the EFCC. I think I've spoken. I don't know if I've spoken. I like talking too much, but I don't know if I was spoken up to 5 minutes. But I believe now as the discussion keeps going, we keep talking about other things.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Liberty. You really brought a good perspective from the media, and something valuable that you mentioned was going beyond storytelling to even writing directly and engaging the actual anti-corruption agencies towards prosecution. But something that rung through in everybody's conversation or the trend that I saw was that there is a strong need to build the capacity of the MDAs. So one of the key things that seems to be lacking is how to go about the enforcement of MDAs complying with the procurement laws, and also how to build the capacity of the procurement agencies. So now that we've heard from all of our speakers, unfortunately, I've not been able to reach Mr. Ajibola Amzat. I guess he's having trouble connecting to the call. I'm going to move to the questions that we have received from the chat section. So we received a question from Favor Emer, who is with Open Ownership, one of our partners here in Nigeria that's working with CAC on beneficial ownership. And she directed her question at Mansour from BPP. And her question is, what verification measures are the BPP taking to thinking of in adopting to improve the quality of data provided by the MDAs? Mansour?
Okay, thank you. I would also use the opportunity to make a general comment based on the presentations that were made after mine. But first of all, to answer that, on the issue of data quality, you would agree with us that we started from the point of how do we get this data up on the system. And now, from the comments that Liberty Hossein made, where he contributed that some information on the portal may not be the actual information that they are putting up from further investigations. So just to summarize this, we are hoping and we're sure that e-procurement that is coming on board will definitely sort the issue of having probably data that may not be true from the inputs made by the agency. So there's a lot of pressure on the CSOs saying that, oh, you've not, on the accounting officers saying that, oh, you've not imputed information on the system. So some of the officers is just human to say, okay, let us try and just put up anything. So that when they ask us, we'll say, yes, we have done it. Where have you done it? Come onto the system and the BB will say, oh, yes, we have done it. So now we're gradually moving to the stage of, oh, we have forced them to do it. Are they actually doing the right thing? Are we actually getting the right information? So when we have e-procurement, it starts from the beginning. Everything is on the system. Payment is on the system. The award is on the system. Everything is being automated. That will help us. So I'd also use the opportunity to put up our colleagues that we are working together with in open contracting, that we're going to need a lot more this CSO engagement and people understanding how and what BPP is doing in relating to e-procurement. Because when this e-procurement comes, we would need the support of the civil society organization to ensure that we all move on the system. Because when you're thinking about transparency, accountability, and ensuring better service delivery, when everybody moves to e-procurement, a lot of these issues would not be. And this is where we would see all the detailed information, right from planning, right from tender, award, contract, at all stages of procurement. So yes, the quality of data is something we're working about. At the moment, what we do is we select out of this inputs that we have on the system, and we go for our own audits and surveillance. For instance, the COVID-19 response that we have had that is on the NOCOPO system, we're going to all these agencies. We have our consultants that are just engaged and are about to go and confirm everything that was bought during the COVID. How much was it bought? Ensure that value for money was achieved. Where we have seen that some of these items were bought in a higher price, we even compare with other medical centers and teaching hospitals, and we tell them, we have lots of reports in MDAs with us that we have told them to refund lots of money, that we have reduced the money from the request they have made and told them, this thing that you said you bought for 5 naira, we have seen it, a lot of agencies, example, bought it for 1 naira. So that contractor should refund 4 naira back to government. We have those reports that we have, and we are at the point of confirming if all that have been done, and we all link up with EFCC and Ministry of Finance and Accountant General Federation that, oh, okay, this is the review that we have done. And so we are at the point we're preparing to do to have confirmation. The audits and the surveillance that we do, the only platform at the moment that we can go back to agencies and confirm those information that are being imputed, are they accurate or they are not accurate. And in terms of some comments that were made in regards to if they are aware of the Public Procurement Act, I don't think there will be an agency that would say that is not aware of the Public Procurement Act 2007. I would even say with the amendments that was done to the Finance Act last year. So we're looking at, we do hold retreats with accounting officers of all agencies, and we are at the point where we're now looking at, oh, how do we even engage the Secretary of the Government of the Federation by saying that, oh, okay, anybody that has been appointed to hold any government office must have a copy of the Public Procurement Act, must be inducted into saying what nature of procurement should you do? What is procurement? What are the things that you are expected to do right from the point of appointment, so that they know the responsibilities of an accounting officer as stated in the Public Procurement Act is being up on them, so that they understand what they are. They are not just here to make anything, but they're just here to have responses to government, which will include the Freedom of Information Act, which will include the open contract, which will include ensuring that processes of procurement are being conducted in line with not only the Public Procurement Act, the circulars, regulations that we put up for the purpose of procurement. So in general, just to answer that, e-procurement is expected to solve that, but pending the implementation of e-procurement, we in BPP review the inputs that are being imputed by these 850 agencies. We send emails to some of them, but yes, this is where we need the civil society organization. This is where the CSOs come in terms of monitoring. We want them to impute, we have awarded this contract to this person at this amount. So we would want different aspects of civil society organization, just the way Data Fight is doing. They are working on the information and trying to make it easy for other CSOs to be able to access and make sense of the data. We could have other civil society organizations that are linking on what the processes of procurement are, if projects have been implemented, what do they want to see? Do they want to see pictures? So these are the feedbacks that we would need to ensure that the upgrade we're doing captures lots of answers to questions by civil society organizations. And this is what this engagement will bring to us, so that we can make improvements, which we are open to. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mansour. You took time to really give us a very extensive answer to that question. And of course, it is understandable that Mr. Mansour is in the hot seat since he's representing government, but I'll give him a minute to have a breather because the next two questions we've seen in the chat section are still related to the law. So I would like Brenda to lend her voice to some of this, and anybody else on the panel can lend their voice to this question. So the question is, what is BPP doing to ensure that women are well represented in public procurement? And I would also open this to our audience because we have Ekiti State here who we're actually working closely with on a project that directly targets women in procurement. So Brenda, would you like to say something, and then anyone from the Ekiti State can also lend their voice to answering that question?
Yeah, hi, thank you so much. Yeah, when I saw the question, I personally got interested because anything that has to do with women really touches it for me. And of course, women build economies. However, within the scope of my work, which is to reform the state laws, gender issues are not part of the APA requirements. It's all just mostly to strengthen the legal system, just so that there will be more transparency and accountability. However, the states, people at the state level should be able to tell us that during implementation that they do A or B in order to include women. So it is during implementation that anything that has to do with women would come in. So I would defer to the person at the state level, whoever is representing any state, to tell us during implementation, how do they reach out to women and include women in their programs? Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Brenda. So I would let Samuel Ogundare from Ekiti State BPP speak on that. He's the first person from their team I can see here. So Samuel, please, can you go ahead and lend your voice to the conversation? Let me see if I can get. I'm trying to see if there's anyone else. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Samuel. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Good afternoon. Please, I don't know if you can just take me through the question again. I was in the middle of some things I wasn't. Really
okay, yes. The question is, that's fine. The question is, what is BPP doing to ensure that women are well represented in public procurement? So I mentioned the work that is currently going on in Ekiti State, and if you can just share a bit on that project, it would be helpful.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Well, as most people already know that Ekiti State is looking into the possibility of encouraging gender inclusiveness, bringing in women into procurement, and presently our interest is to look at the possibility of engaging these women-owned businesses and women-led businesses in the state, starting by identifying them and then looking at looking into the gaps in the law that really doesn't allow the involvement of women, especially in procurement, and then look at the possibility of addressing those gaps. We have identified that where procurement in the state is more of a male-dominated environment, but now we are looking at the possibility of allaying their fears and bringing the women into the system, giving them a proper understanding and orientation when it comes to procurement in the state. Also, we're organizing training, discussions, one-on-one interview with the women-owned businesses so that everybody will have an understanding of what it takes to participate in government procurement. Because what we notice is that many of them, they stay far off and they make judgments about the procurement in the states because they are not really into the system. So it's not because they have a full understanding, but because they're just watching from a very far distance. So we're trying to bring them close to understand registration, to understand how to submit, to do your documentation and come with documents that can actually give you a hedge, when it comes to bid submission. And then we're looking into our laws to also provide preferential treatment for women-owned businesses and women-led businesses, so that at least maybe in a particular bid, a certain percentage will be leveraged for women-owned businesses that participate in such bid bid process. So all of this we are putting together. We intend issuing guidelines also in line with this, and we're working on the manual to further express the content of the law, so that we'll be able to address all the fears of women-owned businesses and encourage their participation when it comes to public procurement in Ekiti State. And I also believe that other states are trying to look at these possibilities. to make sure that women are also encouraged to be part of procurement, because our understanding is women in procurement has more impact on the society than most of these big men, big companies in the states that, you know, they get the government contract, they get the money, and they go out of the states, go out of the country to spend the money. But women get the money and spend more even within the community. So I think that has led to the to the need for us to encourage their participation. And presently we are expressing or recording an increase, you know, in the number of women businesses that are ready to do procurement with the state. I think that's the much I can say for now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much under such short notice, Samuel, for giving some insights at state level, what is going on. So now I would be delighted to hand it back to Mansour now that he's had a breather to say what is happening at the federal level. And after Mansour has spoken, I see a hand raised from Mohammed Sani Kasim. So Mansour? What's going on with gender inclusiveness in procurement at the federal level?
Okay, thank you very much. We've had several engagements with the UN Women and the National Council for Women under the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs. And we're still on the process of either to create. So there are some countries that have come up and say a certain percentage of their capital expenditure for a certain year will be all gone to women. But over that, we've seen that, and we've seen that even after that, the women end up selling the contracts to some of the men to do. So it's just for the purpose of that benefits of the percentage. So they have come to us to discuss how to come up with regulations to target women in the process of procurement. This is in two sides, to see how we have women as part of the officers' engagement in procurement, and also to see how percentage of contractors that are women and what is stopping them. So we've had different engagements where they have to come out and complain that, oh, okay, the process of getting contracts might not be fully competitive and all that. So we are still at the point of either to create a regulation for that or to form up different sorts of engagements, which of course this platform can also enable or assist us in moving some CSOs to put up, oh, okay, what are the issues? What is stopping women from coming on board? At the moment, the law does not allow or does not include to say, oh, this is for men or this is for women. We have some very few contractors that are fully owned by businesses that are fully owned by women, and they still do the contracts, big contracts, not just small contracts in billions, but what are the percentage of people that are engaging government contracts in that line? This is something we have not fully concluded, and which we need different strategies of going out with questionnaires and a lot of things to come up and say, oh, do we really need to put up a regulation for that? And if we do, how do we fully ensure that it's fully implemented so that we don't fall in situations where some other countries have fallen into? Should I answer the next question, or should I just wait for your next? Because I see somebody asking a question about disclosure. We have circulars issued by the highest part of government, which is the Secretary of Government of Federation, mandating agencies to disclose these procurement information about planning, tender, award, contract, and implementation on the NOCOPO system. So yes, and again, is a requirement of the law, the provisions of the Act. Every procurement must have a plan before a procurement is being done, and the provision of Section 1613 of the Act that mandates agencies to submit their procurement records 3 months after the end of a financial year. So yes, this is part of the law. We have circulars that are on that, and we have requirements of the Public Procurement Act. So this is where we can come together and see, oh, for those, we have given a lot of grace period, I would say, over the time, last year, 2 years ago, up till this year. So we can now decide to say, oh, okay, how do we've come up with strategies to rank people that have even imputed information on NOCOPO in collaboration with some CSOs, of which we have come up with about 2 different ranking reports. But how far, how does the media help in that report to go out to everybody? How do we engage? So we're looking at different strategies to even say, okay, let's go to the National Assembly. Anybody that is coming to defend budget next year, if his information is not publicized of the previous year, is not on the portal, we will not even attend to it. So so this is also going to be a forum where we can all brainstorm on how to ensure full compliance, or how to get improved compliance in terms of this information to start with, and then how the quality of this information, how do we go ahead and confirm if these informations are true or not? I think that's the last question. Is there another question?
No, that's the last question. Before I hand over to Mohammed, I want to hear from Adenike on the panel, who can share on the disclosure. She can speak to the question on disclosure. So Adenike, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I thought it was important. Mansoura ended on a note that I thought made sense and connected very well with what I wanted to say. And it's that there needs to be more conversation around what is happening at MDAs. And by conversation, I mean that demand side actors, that's civil society, that's media, need to do a little bit more work in terms of making noise and telling stories about what MDAs are doing right or doing wrong. So this is Nigeria. I like to be very realistic in my expectations. This is a country where we know our justice system struggles a little bit, putting it kindly. We struggle a little bit. How else can we get people to talk about something? How else can we get people to be engaged with something? It's to tell them that it's happening. It's to help everybody see the connection between development, the connection between growth, the connection between prosperity for every person, and procurement and the actions or inactions of MDAs. And I think that perhaps some of the things we need to brainstorm around is how to take the conversation beyond rooms like this. 35 people holding a placard in front of the National Assembly doesn't call much attention. A whole state standing up to the National Assembly and saying that you can't approve this next budget because we know that this was reported, that was reported, and nothing has been done about it. It carries a little more weight. And so I would say, I know that on our end as Datafy, we have been very consistent in terms of, again, telling the stories and again, reaching out to the grassroots, to the state levels to say, this is how you need to be asking these questions. And I think that we may want, as a society or as a community, we may want to invest a little more time in helping the people who are most affected by the actions or inactions of MDA's compliance or non-compliance. We need to invest a little more time and a little more effort in helping them understand. A collective voice is just more powerful than a few people saying a few things in the room. And I think on the next layer of that is to have a conversation around, I know that MDAs have received training at different levels and different layers, but perhaps it'll be beneficial to invest a little more, again, in not giving up and saying, oh yeah, they don't get it, they just want to be bad, and investing a little more in training, in conversation, in engagement at MDA levels, especially sort of those departments responsible for publishing this data, for making sure that this data is good, it's usable. I think that's the extent of my contribution at this time.
All right, thank you, Adenike. So now I'll hand over to Mohammed Sani Kasim, and then Saeed from our panel can speak after him. I know you're both from the same organization though. Mohammed, go ahead.
Yes, good evening all. My name is Mohammed and I have some few questions, The first question goes to Madam Brenda. And thank you so very much for the whole effort you've been doing in making sure states do open procurement reforms. But to start with, there are a lot of states which have started repealing these very laws. And in some instances, we've seen states, for example, Adamawa has amended the procurement law 2 times. And presently now, the procurement law is in the House of Assembly, has already passed second reading. And some of the clauses that institutionalize the whole thing of SIFTES are some of the clauses that the state is willing to want to remove. And this Adamawa have just started, and there are a lot of other states in the pipeline who have the intention of doing such, especially now when a very critical year, we're going to elections and we know how the terrain is usual. So what is the effort, what's the effort the NGF is doing on how to sustain these very key reforms? Sincerely, the reforms have, a lot of the reforms were passed because of SIFTES. Now SIFTES has finished. and we've started to see these laws be amended. What is the NGF doing to make sure there is sustenance of these very key reforms? Then another question is to Mr. Mansour, even though he has answered a lot of them, but I was asking if Mr. Mansour can please give us a timeline. You've made several commitments and we're so grateful for that. It shows that there is political will and there is an effort to make these things work. So can you please give us a timeline which we can check back and see if these things are done, and so that we can praise you very well, more than today. Then another question is for Said from Follow Taxes. And then for the past 1 month, I've been thinking very, very deep about OCDS, about disclosure of public procurement data, especially on how states are disclosing this very procurement data. Taking instance of even the internet penetration in this country, taking into consideration the literacy level around using this technological advancement, a lot of issues. Can we actually say these open procurement, these OCDS disclosures will suit the mass grassroots communities, citizens who definitely mostly need it? So as much as we also go to this, making the portals, making a lot of other technological advancement, it's also very good that we put it at the back of our hearts that we must build solutions that will be easily used by the mass grassroots. And I think that's also the reason why citizens are not using it. Building the portals, fantastic, that's the first step. But we should also start to check the metrics of usage. How much of citizens have used this very data to advance access, to improve access to public service delivery? I think it's also there because, and even the portals are there. We've seen a lot of efforts where civil society organizations have translated the laws. We've seen a lot of efforts. We've seen DataFi doing a lot of stories. But I can say that there's still a lack of interest for citizens to take up that very information and do a lot of the noise, or maybe take the information and hold the leaders accountable because of the system, because of the systems we have, whether it's judiciary, whether compliance, and a lot of other issues. So I think it's also very important that we build solutions that will easily accommodate the needs of citizens. And I think this is what the government can do. Normally we build the portal, then we create a one-way communication. My guy usually say we're just feeding people with information, not communication. So as we build the portals, we will also create platforms where citizens can put in their concerns, can give feedback. But this is where the problem is. You build a portal.
I'll have to put you on hold there,
It's
Mohammed.
fine. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think I've said what I've wanted.
Yes. So, Saeed, would you answer the question, and then Brenda, you can also speak to the question of what can be done about states that have started repealing the procurement laws.
Okay, so do you want me to answer now or after Saeed?
Yes, Brenda, you can go ahead and then Saeed.
Okay, so thank you so much for your question, Mohammed, and thank you for this eye-opener. You did mention that these states amended their laws in accordance with SIFTA's APA requirements because of the project. And we all know that amending their laws, meaning strengthening their public procurement system so that they receive a grant. So what you're telling me now is after receiving the grant, they go back to business as usual, which is non-transparency in procurement system. So thank you for raising this. I'm going to raise this at our next meeting and let them know what states are doing. But you do know that NGF is a think tank. So it cannot in any way punish any state. But it would be good to know that states will comply, strengthen their laws to collect the grant, and then go back and repeal it so that they go back to business as usual, which is non-transparency, non-accountability. I would also like the NGOs to use this opportunity to call out states that do this, because this is why we have CSOs. CSOs ensure that the government works for the people. So if a state happens to strengthen its procurement laws, just so as there'll be transparency and the people will benefit, only for it to collect a grant and then go back to ensure that the people don't benefit, then it's the NGOs need to speak out, call out these states that are doing this. And also I remember, I think Adenike talked about storytelling. This is also part of storytelling. Media should be involved, because that's how we will get these people to continue with the transparency and accountability that we want in the system. The media needs to get involved. Let's start calling them out. If they collect money and then revert back to business as usual, that is totally wrong. And we need to call them out. So CSOs, media, everybody needs to be on board. But I will definitely raise this at our next meeting to let them know that states are reneging after they collect the grants. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Brenda, and thank you for the call to CSOs and media working together to call out this kind of non-transparent issues in our procurement space. So Saeed, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so just to be brief, I don't need to answer Sani's question. He was just sympathizing with me and nobody asked me a question. So he just decided to ask question, then answered it. So you can see, Sani, don't worry, even nobody asked me, I'm fine, it's all right. So I can see that's clear. So if you notice, he answered these questions and we've been working together with Sani. So he is my employer. That's one. Then two, on the women, I wanted to add on this issue of women and open contracting. SIFTers have made some certain adjustments sometimes and requested that states to provide some of these contracts to micro and small enterprises, including women. And that most of the states went out to see that they get that resources, and they got the resources, but mostly all of the states did it just based on what they can. So I'm bringing this thing back because all of the CS that are here or members of the community that are here, please let's take note. The unless we engage with government, we'll know things like this come up, and we don't get to get these women and the local communities to engage. And unless these women bid for those contracts, they won't give them. Even if they say they're going to give the women, unless they request. I remember then we keep going town hall meetings to see that they submit bidding so that they will be considered. Some contracts were kept aside, some of them were even super projects, small grants projects that they meet up. And most of them, some of them, instead of them applying, they still got those in power, appointed their children to request. But bottom line is that's being done. So if we want more transparency, we have to engage it more. And I also want to add something to what Mansour said. Mansour, with all sincerity, if woman is given a project, even if she sells it out, it's still a good thing, because it's business. When you're given a contract and you sell it, it's so add value to the little profit you make from it. It doesn't have to be you're the one that's going to wear a short knicker and carry your bow and go to the road and be parking the sun. Even if you sell it, it's still fine. So please give them, let them sell it. We still need it. That's actually what we want to put in further and we want to see. And also on the part of civil society trying to do, there's a question on what is the reprimand for those MDAs that are not complying. This has been worrying, and I remember in the last call to action, OGP Global did, and they were requesting for information they need to contact the Minister of the Federal Minister of Finance and Nigerian government. With these are some of the requests we submitted. I still have it. I can share with you. So we submitted the whole request, and one of the major requests is we requested for a serious reprimand for every MDA that refused to comply. Because for now, it's just policies, they are just laws. If they don't follow, they find a way to beat around. And unless there's a procurement audit, it becomes difficult to even know who violated. And procurement audit doesn't easily come by. And to some extent, with all sincerity, let me use Brenda's statement, with little confidence in with more confidence on our justice system. When the consultants go for the procurement audit, they may not necessarily do what they're supposed to do. So that's also, so let's just make sure it didn't happen and let's just put in the repayment. I think these are the things I wanted to add, not much. And as I also said, Sani has answered this question, so thank you.
All right. Thank you, Said. I'll move to the next question in the chat section before I move over to the people with their hands raised. So Mansour, this question is for you. What's the government doing with regards to integrating e-procurement systems with agencies such as CAC, FIRS, ITF, because when we're talking about data quality or integrity, authenticity is key. Most companies present fake documents. I think the government should provide a platform that will be accessible to the government agencies and the general public as well. So I'll let Mansour speak on this, and I would also like to nominate Favor Ime from Open Ownership to speak on this, because she has been working with the CAC on this project. So Mansour and then Favor.
Okay, thank you very much for that question. I'd like to inform you that at the moment we have the Federal Contractors Database, which is the CCSP database, where ministries, departments, and agencies, and even anybody, the public, can put up information about any company, RC number, or the name of the company, and you would see if they are compliant to all the responsive criteria as stated in the Public Procurement Act, which is CAC, tax, PENCOM, ITF, and NSITF. So with that, we already have an integration with CAC, FIRS, PENCOM, ITF, and NSITF. So it's the same integration that we are extending to the e-procurement system that we are going to impute. So of course, we would not expect that any company or any firm who has not paid taxes or have not paid their pension and ITF would even participate in the procurement process, talk less of even being awarded any kind of contract. So yes, there's going to be that integration, of which is also part of the SRS documents that we have worked in. That integration that we're expecting also extends to GIVMIS for the purpose of payments, and in the long run on e-procurement to extend to banks, because payments will be made online and all that. The other question, just to loop up, somebody asked a question about timeline. Timeline for the upgrade of the NOCOPO system at the moment, we're looking at the first quarter of next year. Timeline for the e-procurement, we're going to do it in phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, for which we're expecting that the phase 1 would be at the second quarter of next year. They are just at the point of development stage. But yes, on the issue of engagement with citizens, with civil society, for everybody to come on board and have the change management of imputing information about procurement, I will not put a timeline to that, because we are all here together. We're going to collaborate, brainstorm more. We're going to have more of these forums to discuss and see what are the success stories of inputs and what additional information can CSOs, how can you help us to do, because we're doing this together. We can only update you and say, oh, this is a number that have now imputed information, but yeah, how do we encourage them? How do we push them? How do we train them more? We're all open for that discussion, and we can use this forum to do more and more of that, because there are some CSOs that have been assisting us, and we've been going around to ensure that we have trained, and places that we've gone to train, we don't go back to train unless if we're going to do some online sessions. So we've done a lot so that they will not come and tell us that they are not been trained, or they cannot even do it. But again, we have 850 agencies. We have lots to go. Sorry, I'm taking much of your time, but yes, we have more to do together. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mansour. Favor, I don't know if you'd like to lend your voice to that, but after Favor speaks, I will hand over to Danjuma, and that will be the last comment we're taking today, because we are running out of time. But we can definitely keep this conversation going in subsequent community calls and follow-up discussions with each other. So Favor?
Thank you very much, Andy, and thank you to all the speakers who have provided a lot of insights, particularly for me, in what's going on with the procurement space in Nigeria. So I'm Favor from Open Ownership, and we primarily work on using beneficial ownership data to prevent or reduce illicit financial flows and corruption. So for people that may not have heard of what beneficial ownership is, it's essentially who ultimately owns a company, who controls a company, who benefits from a company. So in relation to the specific question on what the government is doing with regards to integrating e-procurement systems with agencies such as the CAC, so Open Ownership has been working with the Corporate Affairs Commission in the past couple of years to develop a beneficial ownership register. So an online portal where CAC will collate all the information of the ultimate owners of every company in Nigeria. And as we all know, you cannot bid for a procurement contract if you're not an entity registered with the CAC. You need to submit your CAC documents. So in addition to building this register, which is currently ongoing and hopefully should be live by mid next year, CAC is working with about 22 government agencies to make sure that the data that is uploaded on that portal is actually interoperable. So for example, the FIRs will have access to that data, the BPP will have access to that data to help them make proper decisions in terms of procurement contracts, and other agencies will have access to that data as well. So the CAC is definitely at the forefront of setting up a system where data can be shared amongst other NDAs, and that data can be used to make fair decisions in procurement. So I hope that helps in answering that question. Thank you.
Yes, it sure does. Thank you so much, Favor. Danjuma, can you ask your question very quickly? Keep it to 1 minute and then we can wrap up the session. Thank you. Danjuma, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. I can see that you have unmuted, but we cannot hear you.
Okay. Okay. Well, what I wanted to say is that enough that we are talking open contract. So, can you hear me now, please? Mass is lacking. Yes, the critical mass is lacking at that grassroots level that should take ownership of all of this. And if we continue to neglect developing that critical mass, we are not going to get the kind of reforms that is lasting enough. Because by the time we are doing that, certainly we engage and make sure that the institutions at the local levels are also able to support communities to meet these targets. I see opportunities for us, again, when we talk open contracting, and just far beyond the public procurement mandate, regulatory institution like the BPP or the state public procurement authorities. I would want us to branch more into talking to Fiscal Responsibility Commission, for instance, engaging more with the legislatures, especially at the state level, because there I can assure you the information is lacking as to what it is that they also need to know to carry out their oversight functions. So if we have these reforms understood, especially on that side, and we have people who are there to guarantee that it remains, then we'll be having partners from within successfully to check this overbearing political interest that will want to return us back to the old regime, where these disclosures have no whole commitment on government. So I really want to salute the efforts we're all making. Said has been doing fantastic around that, and open contracting have made so much efforts to get us all on our toes around procurement. However, I will still insist that we continue to strengthen such partnerships. Let more media partnership so that these storytellings will happen as they should. There are so many small stories and small pockets of events that we are unable to really document and put forward, in terms of strengthening advocacy of what we need to be discussing with government here, now, and after. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. And that was a good way to wrap up the session and to finish up with the closing remarks of how we can work together and definitely build that critical mass at the grassroots level. So thank you all for being a part of today's session. And the last thing I want to ask everyone is on our Mentimeter. So if my colleague Sophie can support me and present and share the link to Mentimeter again so that I can present to you our final question for the day, which is, what other topics would you like us to cover in our community calls, in subsequent community calls? Listening to everyone, we all agree that there is a need for this sort of forum. So now we want to hear from you. Specifically, what other topics would you like us to discuss? So please, Sophie, if you can drop the link to that and I present my screen. Technology tends to fail me sometimes. So can everyone see that? And is that the question you have access to? Is that the question you can see? Wow, Zoom. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
I don't know if you can all hear me because I can't hear anyone.
We can hear you. We can hear you. We can hear right here.
All right, thank you. And I see your answers coming in on what we should discuss in future community calls. Thank you so much. Data literacy, public participation, gender responsive procurement, and how laws impact results, engaging state actors. Yes, keep those coming in because they would inform our community call schedule for the coming year, 2022. I'm not sure what Gangarooks is or Gangarooks. I've never seen that before. But thank you all. I can see that compliance to laws, women inclusion, that seems to be a growing conversation here. Citizen engagement also, I've seen that a couple of times here. Strengthening procurement, media campaigns, legislative oversight, how laws impact results. Thank you all very much. And thank you all very much for being such a switched on audience. I will stop sharing my screen at this point, and all of these results from our first question will be shared with you, and from this question will be shared with you as well. So thank you so much for your time. I don't know if any of my colleagues have closing remarks, Nkechi, Carrie, Sophie. If any of you have any closing remarks, it would be great to hear from you. I will take that as a no and thank everyone for being a part of our very first Nigeria community call. Thank you so much for your time and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye for now.